Hey guys, we're right here in the middle of the 714, Santa Ana, California, and we're gonna head back into the LBC. Let's saddle up the Mustang and go. So we're back in Long Beach, and when I think about Long Beach, there's a couple things that come to mind right away. One, of course, is the ocean and everything that comes with it. From the US Navy being here, to the port that was established, the amusement park called the Pike, which was a big deal before there was a Disneyland. But the other thing besides the ocean I think about is aircraft. In 1903, the Wright brothers back on the East Coast in North Carolina were able to get airborne for the first time. And just 7 short years later, Long Beach built its own first airplane. 1 year after Long Beach built its first airplane, Calbreth Rogers was the first person to complete a transcontinental flight from New York City on the East Coast right here to Long Beach on the West Coast. And he landed on the beach itself. And until 1923, that's how planes landed in Long Beach. They landed on the beach. And then something happened. Long Beach built an airport. And in just a moment, we're gonna head over that way to see the airport, which is the oldest municipal airport in Southern California. But first I want to show you something across the street over here. And that's right over here where you see that sign, DC Jets. So within walking distance of this DC Jet sign, in 1919, the nation's first flight training school was opened. And on that same site where the flight training school was established in 1919, 5 years later in 1924, the Long Beach Airport was established. And the fact that Long Beach was able to build an airport that early on attracted aircraft business to Southern California, Long Beach in particular. And Douglas jets were built here in Long Beach. Douglas Aircraft was located here. Douglas was later McDonnell Douglas and then purchased by Boeing. The sign is still here as a historic reminder, because if you look over here, this building is no longer used for aircraft. You can see that this is now a Mercedes-Benz facility. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna get back in the car and we're gonna follow that motorcyclist, head down this street. Right down at the end there is where the flight school is located and where the airport is now. All right, so here we are at the Long Beach Airport, and you can see even the design on the sign is an airplane. And this is where in 1919, the nation's first flight training school was created. And 5 years later, they built this airport, which I'm walking towards. The terminal building that's there today, it's an amazing, amazing building, was actually built in 1940 and 41 at the very beginning of World War II. Now, Horace Austin and Kenneth Wing designed this building that was built in 1940 and 41, and the style is called Streamline Modern. And Streamline Modern was a style that, as it sounds like, was dedicated to the principles of being streamlined, very clean, not overly decorated, and modern, looking like the 20th century that they were now living in, a time period of rapid travel and movement. And you notice there's long horizontal lines, it's low, and it kind of resembles almost a ship. If you look at this, you'll see there's portal windows. You see those round windows up there? Almost looks like the top of a ship. There's metal railings like you might have on a cruise ship or one of the ocean vessels of the time. And that was intentional. And what an appropriate design for a city connected to the ocean, now looking to the air. Movement, speed, but always nautical, always ocean themed, ocean based. Perfect style for the city, for the times, and for a new airport. And inside, the modernity is beautiful. And while it might be streamlined and not overly ornate, it is still beautiful, and there's beautiful tile work inside.
There's no parking or waiting at the white curb.
So we've obviously left the airport behind. We are now on one of the last open parcels of land that was part of the original ranchos. In this case, this land belonged to the Bixby family until the 1960s when they sold 450 acres to the city of Long Beach. And that land then became this park we're in, the El Dorado Park, which today you can't drive into because of the pandemic, but you can walk onto the land. But this was Bixby Rancho land right here. and it was developed into a park, as I said, in the late 1960s. About the same time this was developed into a park, another 70 acres, which were next to the park parcel, were developed off the Bixby land into a naval hospital. And that's no longer used as a hospital anymore, but the parkland survives. The 450 acres of park here are pretty amazing. You can actually fish here and you can take some of the fish home. There's a police academy training facility at the park here. And there also is land that was used for the Olympics. Now, as you know, the LA Olympics were first held in 1932. They were then held again in 1984. And we are going to have Olympics again in 2028 in Los Angeles. But in 1984, this El Dorado Park, where we are located here, was used for archery in the Olympics. It actually was a site for an Olympic event, which is kind of cool. Not everything in the LA Olympics was actually in LA. They had some events in Orange County, up in northern LA County, and right here in El Dorado Park, which is next to Orange County, they had archery events. So we are still on the old Rancho Los Alamitos land, but we're in front of a pyramid, as you can see. This is actually Long Beach State, the university where we're located, and which was part of the Rancho Los Alamitos, or the Bixby Rancho. And this is a true pyramid. Each side measures 345 feet. It's one of only 3 real pyramids in terms of mathematical dimensions in the United States. One is in Memphis, Tennessee, and the other one is, of course, the Luxor in Las Vegas. So this pyramid, the Walter Pyramid, opened in 1994. Just over 5,000 people watched a basketball game that was broadcast on ESPN. Seating, though, was actually limited to 4,000 people, so it was standing room only then. The sides of it, if they look a little interesting or different to you, that is actually dark blue corrugated aluminum. And Don Gibbs is the guy who designed this thing. Cost $22 million to build, which would probably be closer to $40 million today. But it's a true pyramid right here in the middle of Long Beach on the old Rancho Los Alamitos land. So we are now in Bixby Park, which was originally called Alamitos Park, and that probably leads you to already know that this was part of the Rancho Los Alamitos, and the Bixby family owned this land as well. We're right down by the ocean, and the bandshell behind us was added to the park in the 1920s. Originally, John Bixby planted some trees in here, and that's kind of how it started its life as a private park, as Alamitos Park, and then became Bixby Park in the early 1900s. Back in those days, they had cages full of monkeys, they had a goldfish pond with water lilies, and it became a place of, big picnics and stuff like that. Long Beach was famous for being Iowa by the sea, as they called it. There were a ton of people from the American Midwest who lived here, and the biggest picnics that were held here were the annual Iowa family picnics, and the people who had moved here from Iowa would get together and they would have their picnics here by the sea. They also had Canadian picnics and stuff like that. It was a city full of immigrants, and today it's still a very, very diverse city. The groups of people who live here change over time, but Long Beach has always been a diverse and very, very interesting place. And right here at this location that was just behind me, the bandshell here, this is where Herbert Hoover spoke when he was running for president in 1928. And the ocean is right over this way. So we're looking back towards the bandstand, and over the years Bixby Park added more and more land creeping towards the ocean. And right here we have Ocean Boulevard, and the park actually hops across Ocean Boulevard, and we see the last piece right there at the edge of the bluff overlooking the ocean. Well, it's overcast today. You can see the lifeguard station, command center, and you can see the ocean out there. Look closely, and you notice there aren't any really waves going on here, and that's because Long Beach has a breakwater just out in that fog there, and it creates a harbor which allows ships to come in to the port of Long Beach. So there's no surfing in Long Beach. again, artificial harbor created by the breakwater, which you can't see today because of the overcast. This little house was built in 1922. It's called the Seashell House. About 650 square feet. Charles Lipka built it using crushed abalone. And the abalone actually helped it survive, so it's still here almost 100 years later. This building right here, built in 1929 in Belmont Shore, was built for the use of the police department as well as the Long Beach Fire Department. The police department's not here anymore, but the fire department still occupies the building, and it's engine company number 8. It's the only commercial building in this area still being used for its original purpose. And if you're wondering what style this thing is, it's Italian Renaissance Revival. And Americans in the early 20th century were really into historic styles, including the Italian Renaissance style. Looking back to the days of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, but using the very American brick. So as we leave the fire station number 8 and head this way, take a look at what we find. Right beyond Santa Ana Avenue, pizza. Okay, I'm waiting to go get pizza. Domenico's Pizza, still family owned. The oldest Italian restaurant in Long Beach in the area, opened in 1965. And since Loretta's on 7th Street is closed, this is where I'm gonna get some pizza before I go home. So I have to come back in just a little bit because I'm not quite ready to go home. Let's get back on the road. So in the 1920s and 30s, Spanish-style living was just a romantic idea that a lot of people wanted to have. And these apartment buildings behind me are pretty amazing. Let's check them out. So this Casa Grande apartment building, built in 1928 by Shelley and Schilling, was following the romantic style of the time period, done in the Spanish style. And it was created for wealthy people looking for a place to live that didn't want a single family home. Some of the units were actually larger than individual homes at the time. And the floors were mahogany, the doors were mahogany. Every apartment had a different paint scheme. And if you notice the way it's put together, it does look like almost like individual houses in a Spanish village. And courtyard Spanish style living was very, very popular at the time, but this was nicer than most. And in a couple years, this never would have been built because in 1929, the Great Depression began. Today we've been focusing on the east side of Long Beach. It's interesting because Long Beach does not run truly north-south coastline like much of Southern California, and you actually go from east to west as you travel through Long Beach. And we're in the Belmont Shore area of the east side of Long Beach. And this is Chuck's Coffee Shop right here. I've never been here, but I just love these little coffee shops. I had to take a picture of this. I've never been here, but I hope it reopens soon. I'd love to actually go in there and try their food. We're right down near the ocean and the Belmont Pier. But we're gonna go to the site of something that's not here anymore. So we are at the Belmont Plaza in the Belmont Shore area that I mentioned in East Long Beach. And what used to be in here, you can see one of the outbuildings is still here. But what used to be here was what was called the Taj Mahal of American swimming training locations. And it was built in 1968 and it was gorgeous. It had amazing glass windows that and doors that opened up so you could see the ocean over here, in addition to watching the swimmers. Greg Louganis from Santa Ana trained here. He went on to be one of the greatest divers ever in Olympic history, and he came over here to train. And when that was torn down, it was very controversial. I remember back in the 70s, my grandfather took me here and tried to get me to swimming in the pool, but I'm like, I don't know people here. I'm not from this area. Seal Beach is where I'm from. That's right next door to Long Beach, but I was an introverted and shy kid. I do have friends who swam there though, and they tell me the place was absolutely amazing. But we have to be careful that we don't lose these great historic places because they can't be replicated. You can't do it quite the same. And while that new $10 million facility that's supposed to go in here is supposed to be incredible, I think it would have been better if we held on to the original ring. But hey, that's my own input and opinion. obviously the community decided to go in a different direction. Before we head over to John Gord's, which was established in 1965, and then to Domenico's, which was established in 1954 for pizza, we're going to look here at some pictures from the Long Beach Post and the Orange County Register. This is the 1968 natatorium, sadly no longer with us. Okay, so headed north and west, no longer on the east side of Long Beach, but before I go home, I'm going to do something that's going to make me really, really happy. What, you ask? Let's take a look. We are at John Gord's Bacon Broil, opened in 1965 by Roger and Carol John Gord. The bakers who bake here were trained by Carol, and the great recipes and baking continue. Let's go inside and get some pie. Okay, I can't wait to get back in the car and take this home. I have to take a peek inside and look at my lemon meringue pie. Oh, man. All right, we can take this back to the 714. Okay, we're back, which means we're at the end of our trip, or just about. Gotta get some pizza to take home. So before I head back to the 714, I thought I'd stop here at Mother's Beach. And yes, my mother did take me here. Thinking of you, Mom. And also in the late 1990s, I used to go down to the water here. Down here to the water where I would rehab from an injury I got in basketball, like I said, at the end of the 1990s. And just as Mother's Beach kind of saw the end of my basketball days, it's also going to see the end of our trip for today. So let's check on that pizza. Oh yeah, that looks good. Pizza looks good. So it's time to head back to the 714. Thanks again. I'll see you next time on Travels with Mr. G. Mm.